What's up everyone? It's Rayvon from Love Lola. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am just so happy to have you here with me. Make sure that you take a moment to look down below in the description box because that's where you're going to find a link to where you can purchase the pattern. I'm going to have links to where I purchase my materials, my vinyls, my zippers, my hardware. If I'm using it, you're going to have a link to where you can find it. Today, we're going to be making Okay everybody, so I have got all of my pieces cut out. I've also got them interfaced and stabilized. I just followed the instructions in the pattern on how to do that. For my interfacing, I am using Fuse Plus. For my stabilizing, I am using Flex Foam. Now, because there will be some binding going on, I made a point to leave my interfacing out of my seams. Obviously, stabilizer is not in my seams. Yeah, I used, yeah, that's about it. I used waterproof canvas for my lining, so I did not interface my lining. I'm going to be doing a couple of parts different only because I am using webbing instead of vinyl. So when the instructions call for us to make a strap, you know, the traditional way where you put a line down the middle, fold it in half once, and fold it in half again, I will not be doing that because I will be using webbing instead. I am also going to be using webbing for my strap detail piece. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to be working on is going to be our strap detail piece. So I'm using the webbing. You should have fabric. And then also our D-ring connectors. And then our strap, which I'm not going to be making because I'm going to be using webbing. All right. We're not working with the handle right now, so put that aside so you don't get that mixed up. So you want to draw a line down the middle of your D-ring connectors, long way, and then place a piece of double-sided tape on top of that. Once you have that done, you're going to fold in on either side. You're going to fold your strap detail in a similar manner. I'm not because I'm using webbing. Alright, and once you've got your strap and your D-ring done, you're going to go and add a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch along the long ends. Okay, now we're going to set this aside and work on our handle. I'm using webbing, but I am going to be doing a little bit of stitching today simply because I wanted to make my handle a little bit, give it a little bit more oomph. And also, I wanted it to be two-tone. So I'm going to be adding these two together, so we'll be sewing. What we want to do is, once you get your handle made, and it's the same way that you make a strap, then you're going to start sewing. I'm just going to place mine together. Alright, and when we start sewing this, we're not going to sew it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to go ahead and join it at 3/8 of an inch, okay? Very important, 3/8 of an inch. Alright, and now we're going to sew this at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. going to be making some marks on these handles, go ahead and use a removable ink. The first mark is going to be at 5 inches and the second mark is going to be at 6 inches. You're going to do that at all 4 sides. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get our 1/8 of an inch top stitch added. And we're going to be doing that from the 6 inch mark. So we just did 5 and 6. We're going to start here at the 6 inch mark. And we're going to go down to the other 6 inch mark, pivot, and come back around. And over the mark that we made. Now, if you don't want to do top stitching, if you don't want your top stitching to show, then just leave your thread long and then you can pull it through and tie it on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and back stitch because with this print going on, I don't think it's a problem. And I'll probably just start mine right in an area that has black anyway, and it's going to blend in with my thread. Okay, so for this next part, we're gonna go ahead and get our handles attached to our main panels. So grab one of your main panels. Also, go ahead and cut a piece of double-sided tape 4.5 inches long and place it along both ends of your handle. We want to position this so that it's 3 inches out from the center of your panel, so make sure you have your center marked. I'm going to measure out 3 inches. And then I want to place it 1 inch up. So there's my 1 inch mark. I'm going to burn the edge of my webbing really quick. And I'm going to place it at that 1 inch mark right there. Keeping it in line with the ruler. And I'm going to pin it because this webbing is pretty thick. I backed my webbing with this black webbing that I have. It's a really sturdy, thick webbing. I like to use it for handles because it's, like it doesn't move, and I don't like my handles to feel like flimsy. That's my daughter. All right, and now we're going to do the same thing, 3 inches from the other side. Okay, now you remember that mark we made earlier at the 5 inch? Well, now we're going to just sew up the side at 1/8 of an inch, pivot, and sew straight on that line, and then back down 1/8 of an inch. We're going to do that to both sides. Okay, and now we're going to add rivets to right above where we just did that line. So at the 5 inch mark, let's go ahead and add a rivet right above that, about 1/4 of an inch above that and centered. Okay, now once you've got your straps attached, you want to measure up center point and 5.5 inches up and get your magnetic snap installed. You're going to be installing the female side. Go ahead and do that to both of your main panels. Now we can put this to the side. And let's go ahead and grab our front pocket. and our front pocket lining. The front pocket is the one that's going to be showing, you know, on the front of the bag. Now, what we want to do is grab your lining. I'm going to go ahead and find my midpoint. I don't know why I didn't do that already. All right, we're going to measure up 5.5 inches. And get the other half of our magnetic snap attached. Okay, so I did not interface my lining piece, so I will be cutting a little piece of Peltex 70 and using that to stabilize the back of this. I'm going to repeat that to the other side, the other lining piece. Okay, now let's grab one of these linings. And make sure that you're placing it so that this is not upside down. Okay, we don't want to do that. It's closer to the top. And then grab your front pocket. Ignore that it's cut like this. I made a mistake earlier, but it's fine. Now you're going to place them so that they are right sides touching. Match up those midpoints and get them attached. Okay, now we're going to go and get this sewn together. And we're going to do that at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we want to trim only the lining seam allowance, okay? Just the lining. Trim that down to 1/8 of an inch. Okay, now we're going to be placing double-sided tape right along this seam allowance. So it's going to be on the front pocket piece, right along there. So it's basically on the seam allowance of the front pocket. Okay, let's take that off. And now we're going to flip that up and smooth it down. Just like that. Okay, so once you have it folded up like this, please note, in a minute we're going to be doing a top stitch. And when we say do a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch, we actually mean a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch from where these two seams are joined, okay? So it's going to be 1/8 of an inch on your lining up from where they join. So we have the double-sided tape underneath here. We're going to fold it over, just like that. And now we're going to be adding a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch right here on the bottom. Now, I did my other panel first, and I just did my top stitch at 1/8 inch from the top. And then I realized later that I don't think that was right. So I just went and added a second one at the bottom, and I think it looks just fine. Honestly, it probably doesn't really matter, but I just wanted to make a point that in the pictures, it looked like the 1/8 of an inch top stitch was along the seam that it attaches those two pieces. So, to match my other one, I'm going to add a top stitch at both. You do you. Okay, now once you have that done, if you like, you can go ahead and get a name tag or label something put on here. I'm actually going to be doing it on my main panel. So I'm going to grab my main panels and snap that. Now, she said that it may be a little off on the bottoms, but she said it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. Okay, so I think I'm going to put my label on the main panel. And I think I want it to be on the side that does not have the phone. I'm not sure which side is the front. They're both the same besides the phone part. So I'm going to put mine over here, I think. I think that'd be cute. Alright, I'm going to play around with this for a minute. And then we'll be back to our scheduled program. Okay, so for reference, I placed my label 1.5 inch down and centered. Okay, so go ahead and get your front pocket snapped down to your panel, and then we're going to line up the sides. Now, when you go to line up the sides, she said there's going to be a little bit of a gap, but don't worry about that. That needs to be there for construction purposes later. So let's line up our sides. And we need to make sure they're even. We don't want them to be kind of shifted. So I am going to grab a ruler. Okay. And I'm just going to use the grid on my ruler to make sure that this is going straight across. And it is not. See? There we go. There we go. Perfect. Okay, and once you're sure that it's straight, what I'm going to do is mark on the corner where it needs to be. Alright, and now I'm going to go ahead and get these pinned. Okay, and as you can see, those corners are sticking out. Just go ahead and trim those down. Okay, now we're going to go and baste around here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do want to note, when you baste these two pieces together, I recommend that you baste it with the back panel side facing up, because you really want to use this main panel for your seam allowances, right? Because this front pocket, it's going to be trimmed away like we just did, and it's just, this is the main shape that we're dealing with, is this main panel. So just in case your front pocket is hanging a little bit further than the panel, go ahead and use your main panel as your guide, because, you know, that's the oomph of this bag. Now go ahead and do the exact same thing to the other panel. Now, I do want to note that there are quite a few cut pieces, so I do recommend that you go ahead and write down on the back of your pieces what they are, because the sizes are a little similar, and just, I don't know, I get confused really easily. So if that's something that will help you, go ahead and write down the pieces to everything. Now, I don't know if I mentioned, but when I did my interfacing and my stabilizing, I did it just like the instructions said. My interfacing, my stabilizer, I placed on the back of my panel piece, and then I placed interfacing on top of it and fused it all together, okay? Now, on my main panel pieces, I made a point to keep my interfacing out of the seams because there's going to be binding, so I wanted to keep that as thin as possible. Alrighty, so we're working with the panel piece that has that little pocket. Grab your lining pocket piece, and you want to place it so that it's right side facing down with that, and just get them lined up. Get them clipped. Okay, and now we're going to go and sew that together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and now you want to use pinking shears to trim that down to 1/8 of an inch. I don't have pinking shears, so I'm just going to trim it and put a few darts in it. Not darts, yeah, a few darts, clips, snips, whatever you want to call it. Okay, now we want to flip it over and just kind of massage that seam. Okay, so I've gone ahead and massaged those seams and put pins around there, and now we're going to go and add a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance around that curve. All right, now I'm going to add a label right here. So I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I've got my tag on. I'm content with that. Now grab your phone pocket backing piece, and you want to flip this main panel over, and we're going to be lining these up where the right sides are touching. So this is the right side of our lining, and the right side of our phone pocket backing is going to be touching. But before we do that, we want to cut off this corner just because it's going to help things later with the bulkiness. So we're going to cut off at an angle about 1 inch. Okay, and now line them up starting from the bottom right there. The height is a little different from the side and the bottom, so just make sure that you have it the correct way. It should be the same size as this pocket. And now we're going to sew these together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from here across the bottom and back up to the end right there. Okay, let's work on our zippered pocket. Grab zipper pocket number 2. It's going to be the smaller one. And you want to place it right side facing up. Grab your 9-inch zipper tape. Go ahead and separate it. Your zipper teeth are right side facing up. Now you're going to base this onto here. I'm being lazy, so I'm just going to be using double-sided tape. But you could just sew it on. If you do that, then do that at 1/8 of an inch. There's going to be a little bit of overlap. Just kind of center the zipper. It's fine. Again, zipper pocket is right side facing up. Zipper teeth are also facing up. Once you've got that basted on, grab your zipper pocket number 1. And you're going to place this one right side facing down. Now you will notice that your zipper pocket number 1 is slightly longer in height than zipper pocket number 2. That's fine. If it helps, go ahead and flip this over. I lied. If it helps, go ahead and flip this first piece over on top so that you can see the height difference and that you can make sure that you center it. So let's line up the edge of zipper pocket number 2 with the edge of zipper pocket number 1 and get that clamped together. All right, you may need to put your zipper foot on for this part because we're going to be getting these attached at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Let's turn this inside, right side out. All right, and at one end, you want to press your material away from the zipper. And you want to do that on both sides. So, pushing that away, flip it over, and push that away as well. Alright, I'm going to add a few clips on there. Alright, and now I'm going to go and do a top stitch right there at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that top stitch, that's going to be considered the lower side of our pocket, okay? The lower front of the pocket. Now we're just going to rotate it to the other side and place it so that the zipper teeth is facing up. And basically what we want to do is, first I'm going to kind of pull that away from my zipper. Press it. Okay, now what you want to do is basically just wrap this, and this is zipper pocket number 1. It's the longer piece. Basically what you want to do is just wrap it around that seam allowance on the inside, kind of like how we did the front pocket earlier. After we sewed it together and we just wrapped it over the seam allowance, that's basically what we're doing. Get it nice and snug, and we're going to be adding 2 top stitches to this. One at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the top, and one at 1/8 seam allowance from where that seam joins the zipper. So, get it nice and tight around your seam allowance, and I'm going to go ahead and put some pins on it to help me hold it. Alright, now I'm going to get these top stitches added. I'm going to top stitch right above my zipper first because I don't want that to start to scoot down and interfere with my zipper pull. So I'm going to do this first and then along the top. Okay, next you want to lay the 2 zippers together as close as you can. And if you're using a material that allows you to press it, then go ahead and press it. I'm not. I'm using vinyl. So, yeah, I'm not going to press it. But if you can, go ahead and do that. I'm going to put a tiny little clip right here. Since I can't press it. Just to help it hold its shape. I'm moving that pocket on the inside out of the way for when I clip this. Okay, and now we want to turn this inside out. Okay, so zipper pocket number 1 is going towards the top, and zipper pocket number 2, which is the smaller one, is coming out towards the bottom. Now, if you were able to press this, it would be much easier at this point. I wasn't, but it's fine. I'ma be alright. I'm just going to put a clamp on the sides. Okay, there we go. And now what I am going to do is sew up the sides of zipper pocket number 2. And we're going to sew up to the zipper tape. From my experience, I don't sew all the way up to the exact zipper tape. I stop about, I stop where, you see how the zipper pocket number 2, it goes up and you have the seam allowance right here, and then you have a little bit of space before you get from the seam allowance to the zipper. I go to right where that seam allowance starts. And that just helps give my zipper a little bit of room to not get smushed. And we're sewing this at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance.